Yeah, that pretty much sums up the NHL's list of the top 10 players of the past decade. Hi, welcome back to Top Cheddar Sports. Happy 2020. This is the first Top Cheddar video of 2020. Happy Winter Classic Day. That is actually currently on in the background while I'm recording this. It's a great day for hockey. The Winter Classic, always a cool event. This year, I really like that they had the Stars and Predators in it. Two teams that have not been in a Winter Classic before. And two teams that really had never really been in consideration, I think, to be in the Winter Classic before. So it's good that they're kind of getting some different teams in there, as it was getting a little repetitive with a lot of teams kind of playing in the Winter Classic over and over and over again. Like Blackhawks had a few, the Bruins, the Penguins, Flyers, Capitals, all those guys all seem to be playing in multiple Winter Classics, so I'm glad they kind of switched that up. But yeah, as you can tell by the title of the video, what we're going to talk about today is that list of the 10 best players of the past decade, the 2010s, that the NHL released, which has gotten a ton of scrutiny for being terrible, as it should have, because it was terrible. So to quickly review, I'm not going to get into a ton of detail about their list, because quite honestly, it's awful, and I could talk about it for hours about how bad it is and who should be in there instead. So I'm just going to quick run through what their list was for those who have not seen it, and then talk about a little bit about why I disagree with some of them. So number 10, they had Zdeno Chara. I'm okay with this. Chara, for a while, more so at the beginning of the decade, was one of, if not the best defensemen in the NHL for a while. Won multiple Stanley Cups. To put him in the top 10, though, might be a bit of a stretch. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but I'm okay with it. Number 9, Steven Stamkos. Yeah. Number 8, Anze Kopitar. Kopitar's been vastly underrated his whole career, and yes, he won 2 Stanley Cups with the Kings. He's won Best Defensive Forward a couple times. I don't know. I don't know if, again, just like Chara, I'm okay with it, I guess, but I don't think he should necessarily be there in the top 10. Number 7, Henrik Lundqvist. Lundqvist, one of the better goalies, really ever. Unfortunately, has never won a cup. He's been one of the best goalies of the past decade, but I don't know if I necessarily agree with him there either. He is the only goalie to make the top 10, should be noted. Number 6, Evgeny Malkin. I'm okay with this one. Malkin, multiple Art Ross trophies, multiple Stanley Cups, Conn Smythe. I mean, it seems deserving to me. He's been a pretty consistent player. Number 5, Connor McDavid. I think this is a little premature for this past decade. McDavid's only played for 3 years of this decade, including this year. So, oh no, not included. Yeah, well, three years, and he was injured for most of 2 of them, really, his rookie year and last year. So I don't know. I mean, obviously McDavid is one of the best players in the game, but just with the small sample size for the whole decade to put him at number 5, I don't like that. Number 4, Patrice Bergeron. This is another tricky one because he has been probably the best two-way forward in the entire league over the past decade. So I do think he deserves to be in the top 10, but at number 4, I think that might be a tiny bit high. Number 3, Erik Karlsson. Speaking of putting a player too high, Karlsson was the best defenseman in the league for a solid 2 or 3 years. He has since not been, and to put him at number 3 overall player in the entire decade is abysmal, and I disagree with it wholeheartedly. I don't even know if I'd put him top 10. You can make the case for it, certainly, and I'd be okay with it. But number 3, absolutely brutal. And then number 2, Alex Ovechkin. Number 1, Sidney Crosby. These are obvious choices, and these were correct. The most notable snub, as many people have pointed out, is Patrick Kane, who had the most points of any forward in the past decade. So I don't know, that in itself, I don't know how he's not in the top 10. Add on top of that a couple scoring titles, a Stanley Cup MVP, multiple Stanley Cup trophies. It is just truly mind-boggling how Patrick Kane is on this list. Same could be said for Jonathan Toews. He also certainly has a case to be on this list. And then a guy like Pavel Datsyuk not making it's interesting to me. Although I get it. I think it's interesting also no other goalies made it. But yeah, again, like I said, I'm not going to go into too much more detail with all of that, but that's their list. So now what I want to do is I compiled my own list for the 2020's. By the end of the 2020's, year 2029, when we look back at the decade, this is who I think we will see as the top 10 players of the decade. Obviously, I didn't go into the guys that are still currently in juniors or college or even high school playing right now because I don't know if they'll be good or not. So obviously, there could be a guy that should make this list and will make this list that we don't even know exists yet. But this is looking at the current NHL today and the young stars in the league and kind of where I think things will shake out for the next decade. So I'm going to start. I'll start at 10, go down to 1. And then I do have a handful of honorable mentions as well. It was tough to make this list. So number 10, I have Austin Matthews. I think he is one of the better goal scorers in the league. I think he will continue that throughout his career. And I think the fact that the Maple Leafs have locked up Marner and Nylander and all those young guys to surround him, I don't see him slowing down anytime soon as he has good teammates around him. So Austin Matthews, I have at number 10. Number 9, I have Elias Pettersson of the Canucks. This guy is one of the best hands that I've seen in a really long time. Well, really since McDavid. His hands are comparable to McDavid's. Not as good, but comparable. And yeah, he's on an up-and-coming Canucks team, and he is already having an incredible sophomore season. I think he'll only continue to get better. Number 8, I have Artemi Panarin. The Breadman is younger than we all think, and I thought the move to New York would actually slow his production a little bit, but it's only gotten better as he's matured, he's entering his prime, and he's the go-to guy in New York. He gets the most ice time of all of their forwards and plays on the top power play, top line. I mean, he's getting a lot of ice time, and he is producing with it as the go-to guy to carry the puck there in New York. He's signed there for 7 more years, so that's pretty much the decade right there, and I think it'll continue while he plays there. Number 7, I have Cale Makar of the Avalanche. He is the only defenseman I actually have on this list. I think his play speaks for itself. The dude is only in his first full season in the NHL, and he's already talked about in the Norris trophy voting. So he's going to be great. He will, I think, definitely be the best defenseman of this coming decade. And yeah, look for him to continue the Denver University product there. 6, I have Jack Eichel. Eichel's enjoying a career year here. He's really coming into his own. He's still extremely young. And yeah, the Sabres have some good pieces coming up. I think they're an up-and-coming team. They will make the playoffs again shortly. And yeah, I just really like Jack Eichel's two-way play. He's a very good two-way center, and he's proving that this year. Number 5, I have Leon Draisaitl, who topped 50 goals last year and is second in the NHL in points this year again, often in the shadow of McDavid. Still a very, very good player. Certainly will be considered one of the best. Crosby came in at number 1 and Malkin at 6. I see something similar happening with McDavid and Draisaitl by the end of this decade. Kind of your 1-2 punch there, but McDavid will still get more recognition, and rightfully so. Number 4, I have Alex Barkov of the Panthers. Talking about good two-way centers, Barkov is probably the best or second best two-way center that we will have in this coming decade. What I really like about Barkov is his size and his reach. Very, very big guy, well built, and just has the arms of freaking Joel Embiid. Very big wingspan. He uses that to his advantage in the defensive end and the offensive end. Very smart player as well. 3, David Pastrnak of the Boston Bruins. So David Pastrnak, it feels like he's been in the league for like 8 years, but the dude is only 23 years old and just getting better better and better and better every year. Playing on that Bruins team, the one thing that does concern me slightly, but not too much, is in this coming decade, Bergeron will certainly retire, Krejci will certainly retire, Chara, the Bruins as a whole, Rask, they're getting older. A lot of their guys are getting older. Marchand is still young enough. He'll play with Pastrnak for most of this decade. And they still have some good defensemen there and everything. But David Pastrnak, I see more of what happened with Panarin happening with him in terms of I think he's just going to get better as those guys retire because he'll be the go-to guy if he isn't already. And he's got a great shot. So number 2 and number 1, I think are pretty obvious. Number 2, I have Nathan MacKinnon. He will be the best two-way center in this coming decade, probably right ahead of Barkov. I mean, number 1's Connor McDavid. We'll just get that off the top right there. So these two, really, I don't really even know what to say about them. If you watch them play, you know why they're great. Strength, speed, skill, hands, shot, passing, hockey IQ, everything. They all got it. 2 of the faster skaters, maybe the fastest skaters in the league as well. They're going to continue to tear it up this decade and be the best 2 players for sure. So now, because this is a longer video, I'm just going to real quick run through my honorable mentions. Eric Brandstrom, defenseman of the Senators, one of the most highly touted prospects, defensive prospects in the game. He's currently in the NHL, not doing amazingly, but neither is the Senators as a whole. But he will develop and certainly be one of the best defensemen of the decade, along with Thomas Chabot, his teammate, who is also an honorable mention for me, another great defenseman. He's already tearing it up. And speaking of a big guy with long reach, Chabot also fits that mold and plays a very similar game to Erik Karlsson. Sebastian Aho of the Hurricanes, very good player. Also an honorable mention, Matt Barzal of the Islanders, one of the better skaters I've seen ever. Also an honorable mention, Matthew Tkachuk of the Flames, brings a nice two-way game, a little gritty style of play as well. And he certainly can get it done offensively. Braden Point of the Lightning, similar reasons to the other guys, just a good young center who has a very high hockey IQ and will continue to produce. Victor Olofsson of the Buffalo Sabres, he kind of surprised me this year in his rookie season, but I've seen him play a lot this year, and I really like what I see. I think he's the real deal, and I think he'll continue to play very, very well. Jake Gensel of the Penguins, I was a little skeptical of him at the start because I thought that just playing with Crosby and or Malkin was kind of what was carrying him. But they've both gone down with injuries, and Gensel still produced despite them being out. So I think he is the real deal, and he is one of the most pure goal scorers that we currently have in the NHL today. And lastly, I have both Quinn and Jack Hughes. I know Jack Hughes has not had the rookie season we all expected, but you cannot deny the speed and the skill that he possesses when you watch him play, and same goes for Quinn Hughes. Very, very good players there. They will both continue to get better. And lastly, if I had to pick goaltenders, right off the top of my head, I would say Spencer Knight of the Florida Panthers. I know he's not even in the league yet, but I watched him play in juniors, and in college, and he is the real deal. And obviously Carter Hart of the Flyers, one of the best young goalies in the game today. And Tristan Jarry of the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think he has already taken the reins from Murray, and that will continue to happen. He is the better goalie, and he was the better and higher draft pick to begin with, and he's proving why this season. That will do it. We're reaching the 15-minute mark. That'll do it for Top Cheddar Hockey this week. Leave a like, leave a comment, smash that subscribe button. Let me know below if you agree with my list and why the NHL list was so terrible.